Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the second episode of ProACCtive, the ACC SAAC speaker series. Our topic today will be professional development, and we're very, very glad to have three excellent guests on our call today that are going to share their views and their experiences, which I think is going to be very beneficial for the student athletes out there. So let me introduce them real quick. First of all, my name is Leon Krapf. I'm a SAAC representative from the NC State University. My co-host today is Sydney Knapp from Miami. And with us on the call today is Alyssa Murphy from Louisville, Danny Bonaventura from Pitt, and Dane Dunlap from Miami. So if you don't mind, let's go around the room real quick and introduce yourselves.
Sure. I can go first. My name's Dane Dunlap. I recently graduated from University of Miami. I was the president of SAAC, and Sydney has gladly taken over that role. So I graduated with a master's in finance and did my undergrad in business technology and finance. And then now I've moved on. I'm working at Citibank in New York, obviously not in New York right now, working from home from South Florida.
My name's Alyssa Murphy, and I am the Director of Student Athlete Leadership and Development at the University of Louisville. I have been there, this is my 16th year, but I was 10 years in undergraduate admissions, actually, and new student orientation before I moved over to athletics.
Danny Bonaventura, I'm the career consultant for student athletes. I joined Pitt in January, so I guess I'm in month 10 now. Prior to this, I was an academic advisor for football at Lamar University. And prior to that, I worked for a nonprofit after finishing my master's in social work and working as a graduate assistant in academic services at Tulane University.
I guess I forgot to also mention I was on the tennis team. Tennis was my sport. Left that one out.
So my name is Sydney Knapp. I'm the current SAAC president at the University of Miami, and I'm also on the swim team, and I'm doing a master's of international administration.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So as you can see, we have great guests today. I'm very excited about this conversation. And why did we pick professional development today? As you all know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which has a lot of downsides. But for student athletes, it also had the upside that many student athletes gained another year of eligibility. So many student athletes now have the opportunity to explore some additional educational opportunities, or other student athletes don't want to take advantage of that and find themselves now in a pretty challenging job market. So we think it would be very fitting to offer some help and some advice and some resources on planning the next steps in terms of the career. With that being said, I want to transition into our first question. And the first one is pretty general. So we want to look at the resources on how to find opportunities. And the way we want to split it up today in general is we're going to look at the educational side, so grad school, and also at the professional side. So how do I find a job? So the first question to everyone then would be, like, when I'm a student athlete in my institution, what would be a good place to find out about additional educational opportunities, like a grad school or like certificates? Like, who should I contact? Where should I look there?
I'm happy to take that one to start. I'm actually based out of the Career Center at Pitt, but then housed in athletics. So I always tell them, start with your resources that are immediately available to you within athletics. So you have your athletic academic advisors that you probably meet with on a pretty frequent basis to plan out your classes. They have an understanding of what you majored in and what may be of interest to you. And then also, if you have career personnel working in your athletics department, that's awesome. If you don't, go across the road, as Sydney was talking about earlier, and get involved with career services. They have different ways to talk you through the conversation. They may be able to connect you with alumni who went through a similar process and can help you find different master's programs. And they may be able to put you on to different ways to continue to fund that education after your athletic eligibility ends. So I would say make use of the resources in front of you. Definitely, use the internet to the best of your ability as well. The U.S. News and World Report is a great way to check out rankings if that's something that's really important to you. But I think it's more important to check out the programs that are available and, start by having conversations with the people around you.
If I could just add on to what Danny was saying, I think that having conversations with mentors in terms of what their advanced degrees are in gives you a jumping place in order to start that exploration. You'll be surrounded by folks that have all types of degrees and ended up working in athletics. So start first with the people right around you. And then at your institution, explore which graduate programs have the highest enrollment. That gives you a sign, a look and a peek into that might be a really strong program, something that you're interested in, especially if you're planning to stay at that institution. And I would say even before you get to the part about identifying graduate schools, you probably need to back up a little bit and decide, am I ready to keep going to school? Because that's an important part to know about yourself. And also to think about what are the career fields you might be interested in, and is there a natural graduate program that leads into it? So having some of those basic conversations, some time to reflect about your own interests and desires moving forward can start to guide you as well. And then, look at who are some of the people that are doing the work potentially you want to be doing in life, whether they're big business people or people in education or in athletic, collegiate sports, professional sports, and on the business side potentially, and see what degrees they might have and start to think about those as options as well.
Yeah. Firstly, I totally agree with everything Danny and Alyssa said. Just to add another perspective, talking about graduate schools specifically, something I think athletes don't do enough is network with professors. For my journey with my master's program, it was internal at Miami, but I had networked with a lot of professors, just letting them know, hey, I'm a student athlete. I might not be available to every class, just first day of class, introduce myself, always being in contact with them. And it ended up paying dividends for me later when in reality, when you want to get into a master's program, a lot of times you go through the professors, and that's how you kind of get your name out there. So that helped me out. And then you obviously, Alyssa, you mentioned the mentors. I think that's huge. I had my mentor help me through. And I think the biggest thing for athletes is, like you said, having a mentor to tell you, what does this career path look like? Because a lot of times you jump into a career path without knowing what it entails or where you're going to go with it. So really understanding what skills, are looked for, what skills are needed. So you pick the right masters, and then you really know like where you're going with this career path. So as far as graduate schools, I would say that the resources, those are the best.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for these insightful perspectives. I'm in the same situation right now. I just enrolled in grad school myself, and I was amazed by how many opportunities are out there. So it's definitely worth taking a look and exploring a little bit, because you might think what you want to do is not out there, but I'm pretty sure there is a way to find something that you're really passionate about. So thank you. And then moving on to the next question is kind of the same question. Just Alyssa, you mentioned some people might be at a point in their life where they say, okay, I'm done with school. I don't want to continue to going to school, and I can understand that as well. So what are some good places to look for actual jobs? So obviously we have the LinkedIn websites, we have the career fairs that most people know of. Are those the best places to go, or do you have some secret tips that might be more helpful? Maybe Dane, you start now. You landed a pretty prestigious job at City. How did you go about it?
So I had a little bit of an untraditional experience, but for an athlete, it highlights, the opportunities you can take. So my job at City was, I think, earned through a student athlete program that we had at Miami through SAAC, actually. It was a pilot program they were doing with student athletes across Columbia, Princeton, and Miami. And it was a mentorship program. And a lot of the other athletes did the program, but I don't think they saw the benefit of what it was for. It was to really get your foot in the door and network with these people at a prestigious firm. And that, I think, in itself is enough to get you a job somewhere. And I think that people don't take advantage of that often enough. So I would say for athletes, take advantage of SAAC and career services, because it's there and athletes are like, yeah, I'll do it. But they never do. And there's so much that can be done there. So I had one person tell me, for career advice, he said, use your tennis racket to get you every job that you're going to get. And so far that's worked out. I can't say I've gotten any of my connections not reaching out and being like, hey, I'm a tennis player. And they're like, same, or whatever, I'm an athlete. And that helps out so much. So that's kind of like my story on the athletic side. But for me, SAAC, I think, is a great resource on top of the career fair. And I don't think we use enough of the outside of athletics resources as well.
Such good comments. I would echo the part about exploring what else is going on your campus, because the rest of the institution is trying to help thousands of students. And so there are resources, programs, and opportunities that you can latch onto as a student of the institution. And then specifically as a student athlete, SAAC, great networking experience and leadership experience. Any of the other programs that I know that are happening across the ACC, leadership academies, captains groups, international support groups, anything for our students of color, those are all networking opportunities that all of you should take advantage of. And I think you have to back up a little bit also and understand that the networking piece is a two-way partnership. So it can't just be about the student athlete asking professional people for this favor or that favor, but how can you have a conversation about that professional person's journey? How can you help that professional person with their business, corporation, whatever it might be? Find opportunities to sell yourself by explaining and sharing the amazing skills that you have as a student athlete. And I think often student athletes don't even think about those skills because you've been participating in your sport for so many years that it's just what you do. But people that haven't been athletes, like myself, need to hear all of the amazing things you generally have already done before 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's more than other people, and skills that you bring to the table that other people don't. I would also suggest really looking in your community where your institution is. So, at the University of Louisville, we have partnered with our development staff, our fundraising staff, and created basically a powerhouse pool of women, professional women in our community who want to mentor student athletes, female student athletes in particular. And these are people that are in law, that own businesses, that are in education, in healthcare, you name it. And we can connect a student athlete specifically with someone in a field they're interested in to, under normal circumstances, sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a conversation, to shoot some emails back and forth. But now, really, you've got this virtual space that we're all having to use, so you can expand that network even more to people that aren't in your community. I will say, and then I know Danny will want to add to this part, I'm sure too, but I did see a few people right at the beginning of COVID post on LinkedIn that they wanted to really strengthen their network. So they were reaching out to 3 people in their LinkedIn groups or in their network, and had meetings with those people virtually just to get to know them better and to strengthen that relationship and get some professional advice. And I thought that was a great opportunity to take advantage of a really tough time right now.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll definitely echo what Zane and Alyssa said in terms of networking. I think that's the number one way to get a job. LinkedIn is a great resource, not only for finding jobs that are posted, but also finding people that may be connected to other members of your network. So one thing that I usually do with the student athletes is tell them to look up companies that they may be interested in working for. And then also looking up your university and using that alumni tool to find people that may be working at companies that you want to be connected with, because you may have connections through people that work in your athletic department, through your coaches, through your professors, that you may not even know are connected to those companies. So that's a great way to go about it. In terms of job boards, most campuses have Handshake. I know it's on over 800 campuses nationwide. And we use that as our main career services platform. They post internship and job opportunities. And the good thing about going through Handshake is most of those organizations have contacted your institution. So they're expecting people from your institution to apply. So Handshake is a really good resource. Most student athletes on their campus already have an account. They just have to go and activate it. So that's a good one. Then also thinking about more specifically job boards that are specific to your industry. So if you want to work in college athletics, you should be using like NCAA job board, the NACTA job board, and higher ed learning. Like all of those job boards are really good ways to find opportunities. But definitely more on the networking side. I mean, you can throw out 40, 50 job applications and never hear anything back. Whereas if you have a warm connection, you might have a conversation sooner in the process. So that's something we promote. Here at Pitt, we have something called Panthers to Pros, which is similar to the program that Alyssa was describing, where we match up current student athletes with Forever Panthers that are working in their industry. So that's a great way. If you have a mentoring program like that on your campus, definitely take advantage of it. So you can learn more about how they got to their current role, and then also begin building your network in that way. So those are the main ways I would say, start getting connected. And the last thing I'll say is, if you can find a professional membership organization, that's a great way to build your network. Like I'm part of N4A, which falls under NACTA, and I've been able to network with people across the entire country, which maybe helped me get this job, but also helped me learn best practices so I can become better at my craft. So if you can find those in your specific industry, I think those are beneficial as well.
Danny, I was just going to add one thing when you were talking about LinkedIn, kind of not to make this whole topic thing too long, but I think it's an important point. And it was advice that was given to me by my mentor. It seems a little crazy, but there is this website, maybe some of you have heard, called hunter.io. So what I would do is probably 1 to 2 people a day. I would go find an alumni or find someone in related field, would find their company, and I wouldn't message them on LinkedIn because I felt like it wasn't as official. So I'd actually find their email on this website called hunter.io, type in their company name, and then it shows you the format that they use for the company. So you get a couple misses, but for the most part, it works out. So I would send them an email. And then another good piece of advice I got, which was make the subject grabby. People don't really care about answering you unless you're giving something to them, like you said. So, fellow University of Miami alum, or fellow student athlete, or a mutual connection, even the name of a mutual connection that you have with them. And then right there, and then you provide some kind of value. Hey, this is, some kind of, maybe not advice, you don't want to come off pushy, but, give them something to show that, this person has something to give to me. So I would shoot 2 of those a day when I was going through recruiting process. So yeah, like you said, with LinkedIn, I think there's so much room for exploring, not only reaching out to your connections, but making new ones at the same time.
Thank you guys so much. That was all such helpful information. Kind of going back a little bit to where we started with how so many student athletes now have an opportunity to take a 5th year. I know I have this opportunity. And so a lot of people who weren't expecting to now have to apply to grad school. Even if it's internal, some schools do require that you take a GRE or that you apply the traditional route instead of just going right into the programs. So I guess this question's a little twofold. What does that typical application process look like? And how do you stand out in that process?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm working right now with students that are applying to dental school and also students who have an interest in physical therapy school. And both of those are very different experiences. So, what I generally try to do with students almost in their sophomore and junior year is try to get a sense of what it is they're thinking about so we can create a timeline of what needs to happen, not just like a deadline for an application, but when do you have to take an entrance exam and what entrance exam is it? Where do they want to be geographically? If it's at that same institution, great, that makes it a little bit easier. If they're trying to think of other places, then we need to explore that, and we need to be real serious and have a conversation about money, because I think sometimes that conversation gets pushed to the side, and that needs to be like one of the very first things you talk about. And the other thing that two things, and Dane kind of alluded to this, you need to have a relationship with faculty members, because you need a letter of recommendation from a faculty member, at least one, to go to grad school, because they want to know what your academic work ethic is like. And your academic advisor knows you and knows your work ethic, but isn't in the classroom with you. So you need a faculty member. And then the other piece that I see throwing people off is that they don't realize until much closer to applying that some schools require specific number of internship hours or shadowing hours. So for the students I mentioned that I'm helping with dental school applications and PT school, and physical assistant PA school also, they require so many hours of shadowing ahead of even filling out an application, that if you wait till a month or two or even 6 months before filling out the application, you're already so far behind, and you will probably have to wait to apply to the next year. So those are some things that I think, just as you begin to process the grad schools in your future, that you might want to begin to plot out for yourself.
Yeah. So I can add to that, and I won't really go too much into my grad school experience because I think it's not as realistic. I had a good relationship with faculty, and I just, said, hey, I would love to do this master program. They're like, oh, well, we have a good reputation in the program. We'll just feed you in. But that's probably not as realistic. So I'll tell you what my friend did, and I think it's really special. He actually played tennis at College of Charleston, and he was clinical with his grad school applications. So he was applying for a PhD in muscle physiology. He picked out like 5 schools that he liked, and he dissected the head of the department's research. Like, when I tell you dissected, it was like a month of them going through the research, right? He probably knew more about their research than they did, would shoot out emails that was like a page long and just went into detail about what he thought about their analysis. And then he added, think it would be great if you did X, Y, and Z. And the guy calls him and goes, this is what we're doing in our lab right now, but we haven't released it. Like, that's amazing. Come fly down. It wasn't even an official visit. It was just like, this guy was amazed by how much he knew. And then, they're full ride. And the guy wasn't even great GPA, whatever. He just took so much time and interest. So I'd say if you really want a certain school, you can really dig into the head of the faculties there, see what's going on, and learn a lot about the program, because people kind of like blindly send out applications. I think if you take a more clinical approach to what you're doing and really dissect what you're trying to go for, you got a much higher chance than just sending out as many applications as you can.
That's great insight, Dane. That's an awesome story. And I'll just, to add on to what everybody's been saying, I think being intentional about planning ahead in terms of the hours is extremely important. Also, understand that right now during COVID, if you're behind the 8 ball a little bit, you can't necessarily get those hours at this point. So I would recommend reaching out to admissions personnel and seeing if they're waiving requirements. I know a lot of graduate programs are waiving the GRE or GMAT requirement. Some of them are waiving or reducing the number of hours that you would traditionally need. I know PT school, they're a little more strict on that because they don't want to compromise the integrity of the students coming in. So you may have to take a gap year if PT school is your end game. But I'll also say that the personal statement is usually an important part of getting into these programs. So reaching out to those career services professionals, like I know, we have a pre-law advisor in our office, and she's an expert on personal statements because she reviews, dozens of them on a weekly basis. So they're usually, they have a certain format they want you to follow. And if you can get some insight and, help them shape your narrative a little bit, I think that would be beneficial as well. And then going back to what Alyssa said about having references, you want to have at least 3 good references to go, and one of them definitely should be a faculty member. So, if you only have one faculty member, that's fine, but you should think long and hard about who you want them to be. And, I feel like this should go without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Do not have any family members as your references. So just want to put that out there.
One other thing to think about, and every institution I think probably has a different relationship with their FAR, but that is another resource for you as a faculty member who can give you advice and help you talk through that graduate school process and just the research in general. And maybe even to kind of help coach you through the personal statement piece, depending on what academic program that person is in. But that, again, is a resource at your fingertips. And I know for sure our FAR would love if a student athlete contacted her to talk about graduate school and options, even though she's in a particular field. She knows the faculty across our campus and at other institutions nationally. So please, please, please think about utilizing the support from your FAR also.
Sorry, could you clarify what an FAR is? I'm not super
Sure,
familiar.
that's the faculty advisor. They generally are not in charge of, but oversee the academic committee that is specific to the athletic program and student athletes. They serve as a voting member in some of the opportunities through either the conference or the NCAA. They are generally in direct contact with the athletic director as well. And they generally have a pretty good relationship with the academic staff, athletic academic staff as well. Great point to clarify.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we covered all of our bases.
Perfect.
Dan, you touched on this a little bit, and I have appreciated so much how you guys have covered how this applies to all different majors, right? Because a lot of times a frequent complaint is that like either student athlete career fair is only geared towards a certain demographic or certain majors. And it's really hard when you're trying to cover the entire range, because not all student athletes want to go directly into an athletic field. Maybe they do want to go to PA school, and all of these fields require different sort of standardized testing, which Danny, you touched on. So I want to know if you guys had any tips for standardized testing. This is particularly relevant if you do go to another institution. I know a lot of universities will waive the GRE or the GMAT if you stay in-house. So we don't need to spend too much time on this point, but do you guys have any standout tips that you've known to really help your student athletes?
I would just say for the exams that are for entering medical school and dental school, the student athletes that I've worked with really create a plan, just like they would for a class, but they create a study plan that runs for several months before they have to take the exam. And it's basically like a part-time job. So, if it's 4 hours a day, that is what they're doing. And then they might have to train, or they actually work a part-time job, whatever the case might be. But taking it seriously like that and blocking the time and being committed to it is really, has been really beneficial to students. And then the other thing is to look to see what are the free resources on your campus for all of the entrance exams. We have an academic support program that's at our institution for all students, and they do exam prep for all of the entrance exams pretty much, and any student can participate and there's no cost to it. So that is something that we really try to push out to our students as well. And then one other thing I try to do is connect students that are prepping to take those exams to get feedback from students that have recently taken those exams, just so they can visualize what that day might be like, because it's been a while since most people have taken the ACT or the SAT. And so that at least helps them feel like, okay, my former teammate did it 2 years ago. She's explaining to me now what it's like. At least I have a sense of what's going to happen.
And I'll just add to that in terms of the resources, check out if your campus offers prep books. I think that a lot of our student athletes have found success utilizing those. I know our department loans those out to student athletes. So those are helpful. And then most of the exams, they'll have some type of application, like a pocket prep app depending on the different tests that they need to take. And getting familiarity with the way those questions are asked. They may be familiar with the content, but some of those questions are asked in a very specific way. And some of them will do a free, they'll do like a free question every single day. So you only get that one question for the day, or you can do a paid subscription where they give you multiple questions. You can take up to a full free exam. And a lot of times they'll have a web browser, you can just go to the website and do it, or you could just download on your phone, which, if they're traveling on a regular basis, it may be easier to have the phone app. So those are two resources to keep in mind.
Thanks so much. And Dane, I know you didn't take any of that. I
don't have too much inside. I had to do standardized stuff for my job while I was working. Don't have too much advice except for be consistent, because I studied for a month ahead of time and then I was forced to not study and I forgot everything. So just be consistent. That's pretty much it.
That's awesome. Thanks. And then Alyssa, you mentioned this earlier as something that we should consider first, but it is unfortunately the last question of this section is the financial aid and the scholarship aspect of this. And I also want to know if you guys could we kind of wanted to highlight the ACC postgrad scholarship, which is also super important.
Yeah, the money part should be a first conversation, a realistic conversation. And I'll tell you, that is something that I used to tell prospective students when I worked in admissions and was talking to high school students that, this money conversation is important and helps keep things really realistic. So one is to think, if you're staying at your institution, looking to see what options are available if you are getting any athletic aid. If you're not, then you need to be thinking about, and really everyone should fill out the FAFSA every year, no matter what, just to see what you're eligible for. And that's the application for federal aid. So when you fill it out, you are told these are the loans you can get, or this is any free money that you're eligible for. So it's always worth filling it out. The other thing is to make sure you're talking with your academic advisor and whoever is the director of academics for athletics about the postgraduate scholarships, because those are big time, and certainly even gives you a little wiggle room if you're not immediately going into grad school or not. And there are some of those that can be at a conference level or NCAA level. And then whatever the program is that you're looking at, look to see what kind of aid they provide to students as well, because sometimes that might look like a graduate assistantship or a graduate teaching assistantship. It might look like, a work study position, maybe, which is normally something that's undergraduate, but there might be something like that working in one of the offices. If we're talking about you're not still competing, because I understand if you're competing, you're not going to have time for all of these other things. But, and then I would look at, are there any outgoing scholarships from the undergraduate program where you're earning your degree, your first degree, and see what options are available there. Because all of that, when you pool all of that together, then you start to have enough funds to cover everything. And I will just put this out there, if your eligibility is over and you're going to graduate school, it might be time that there's a part-time job that has to be part of the package deal. And it feels like I couldn't possibly have enough time to do that, right? But you've done so much more and you can handle more than most people. So really trying to find a job that might help you in that academic field anyway would be another option as well.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I building on Alyssa's point, I think graduate assistant positions are a great way to fund your terminal degree or your next degree. And oftentimes being student athletes, we're familiar with graduate assistants that might be coaches, but many departments within your athletic department offer graduate assistantships. I mentioned earlier, I did mine in academic services within the athletic department. I know, marketing often will have a graduate assistant. So there's plenty of opportunities within the athletic department, but then also look outside of the athletic department. I mean, student affairs will offer graduate assistant positions. There's often research graduate assistant positions that you could potentially get to fund that degree. And then the ACC postgrad internship is a great opportunity. There's the NCAA postgrad internships, which oftentimes you need to finish your eligibility to take advantage, but there are a couple that you can continue. And, you know, I know that's a pertinent topic right now with, you know, the scholarship crunch with, you know, new recruiting classes coming in and they may not be able to renew your scholarship at the same amount. So I would say definitely explore all of those opportunities. And, you know, if you don't get a graduate assistant position right away, when you're in school, that can be still a great time to look within, you know, they have a job portal within the university, or sometimes, you know, I know a few people that after their first year in a grad program, because of their work, one of the professors approached them to ask if they would be a graduate assistant. So definitely always be on the lookout for those opportunities. And, you know, I want to go back to that last question. There's something I forgot to mention in terms of taking those tests to get you into grad school. If you're on the fence and you're not sure one way or the other, I would say take advantage of the free resources while you have them while you're in school, because most of those tests are good for a certain period of time. Like I know the GRE and the GMAT are both good for 5 years. Once you take them, your score is good for 5 years. And you can go, you know, you can go work for 2 years and apply to a grad program. You'll still have that score. Also, if you're kind of in that academic mindset, you know, you might be a better test taker now than you would be 2 years from now. So just want to mention that as well.
Yeah, I think both Alyssa, Danny, you guys hit it on the head with resources. I'll just add something kind of aside, and it has to do with the ACC postgrad and just trying to really put your name out there in every channel, because ACC postgrad, sorry, you're not going to get that scholarship if you don't, you know, do and have an impact and put your name out there. You're just not. And I think the same goes for when you're talking to faculty. In my case at Miami, I was accepted into a certain master's program, and at the last minute, I changed my mind and wanted to do a different one. And when I was talking to the head guy, the second one, I basically told him, look, this is what the last program offered me scholarship-wise. And he was like, okay, well, like, can we do better? Or can you do better is what I was asking. He was like, okay, well, I guess we kind of have to. So they did. And so I just think putting your name out there and having a good reputation around the school, or, you know, around your school, different schools, it goes a long way, just putting the work in day in, day out.
Yeah. Great advice. So let's leave the academic side behind us for now and transition back to those student athletes that don't want to continue going to school and find themselves now maybe transitioning into a very difficult job market or trying to get an internship in a very difficult job market. Speaking to those student athletes, and also maybe speaking to the student athletes that think about this entire process for the first time, maybe thinking about their first ever internship, could you offer some insights on a job application, the application process for general jobs? I know it's very diverse. I know it's very different. I know, Dane, you and I have in common, we went through the investment banking process, which is pretty competitive. I also went through the consulting process last summer, which is similar. And the entire process can be pretty intimidating with interviews and everything around it. What tips do you have to offer for student athletes that find themselves in this situation right now?
Well, I think the typical advice is cast a wide net, and I think that's right. But I also am not an advocate of just sending blind applications. It never was successful for me. I probably sent 60 or 70 internship applications and got a response on one, especially being an international student. I put all my eggs, which is probably not the best thing to do, in one company, which was Citi, and actually did the interview for the internship, did not get it. They said, you know, your technicals aren't good enough. And I basically bothered them for about a year. And I, no lie, I probably was talking to 20 plus people at the bank, just reaching out. And I mean, I love the company. And I was like, this is where I got to be. So I was just so persistent to the point where they probably felt like they were working with me without actually me working there. So I would never send personally a completely blind application. I just wouldn't. I would have a name and I would have a contact there, and I would tell them, look, this is I'm applying. I'm interested in applying. Then they'll tell you, all right, we're hiring. We're interested. They have your resume, and then you get put in the top of the resume pile. It's just how it works. A blind application, there's too much machine filtering nowadays. They look at the GPA, look at your international. You'll get filtered right out. So word of mouth, if they know you, to me is the best. Have a great resume. I don't know if we're going over that, coming up, but just have a tip top resume. That's kind of a check the box thing, I think. But yeah, I would say getting your name out there before you send the job applications was my best. And like I said, I had probably 6 people calling me the night before my interview saying, good luck, here's what you should do. And I think at that point, it's hard for them to say no. So.
Yeah, I'll add to what Dane said in terms of, throwing out those blind applications. I think, if that's what you want to do, I think, you can find success that way. It would not be my recommended path. I've personally done it before. It's not fun. They ask you to fill out the whole, educational background, your job background. It's literally all the stuff from your resume. And a lot of times, to Dane's point, they're using that for tracking in human resources. It's really not going to get you to the job that you want. I would say, in addition to what Dane said, utilizing LinkedIn, like we talked about earlier, then also checking out specific company websites that you may be interested in working in and reaching out to people that are in hiring positions, because a lot of times they'll have jobs available that they're not even posting on these job boards. And the only way you can find out is by reaching out to them. I would also say you need to stay patient with the process. That I saw a thing on Glassdoor that they said that the average job application process is 23 days between when you apply, you interview, and then you potentially be offered the job. That's the average. Some of them are quicker, but some of them are much longer than that. So sometimes you kind of have to play the waiting game. You can be persistent, but sometimes you also have to leave the ball in their court. And wait for the offer or, the response back that you're looking for. You don't want to overburden them, but at the same time, you don't want them to forget about you either. So it's kind of like finding that fine balance. So those are just a couple of general tips.
I agree with everything that's been said. I will again echo utilizing the staff resources around you, keeping people in the loop about where you're applying or where you want to apply, because the chain of people knowing people is incredibly small. And so, if you are interested in XYZ, and maybe it's that I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, but once I do one introductory email for you, that opens the door to a really important conversation for you moving in that direction. So keep people in the loop with where your interests are and what you're looking for. And I would say also, instead of just a huge wide cast of applying, you also need to be looking for places that you're applying to that fit and match your values, because by casting a huge net, you're sort of like free for all, you don't care. And you want to be working at a place that not just you are a good fit for them, but they are a good fit for you, that what they stand for is what you believe in, that their core values as a company or as a team, as a staff, matches, your work ethic, your commitment, your idea of what's right and what's wrong, all of those types of things. And that's not always an easy thing to think about when you feel anxious about needing an internship and needing a job and wanting to know what your plan is going to be. Those are the moments where we have to let some of that go. And I talk to lots of students who want to know what their plan is months and months out. And some people are super lucky and they've got that figured out. But especially now, I think we have to be even more flexible and even more patient as we work through the challenges that we're all facing and trying to find what the right spot is for you, because it will happen. It might take time, but it will happen, and you'll feel much better about where you end up if you don't rush into the very first thing that pops up for you.
Alyssa, you brought up a point that made me think of something else. Is as a student athlete, sending blind applications and casting that huge net doesn't make any sense to me, because writing student athlete in that little text box does nothing for you. But as a student athlete, it should be front and center of your application. It's your story. You're going in there saying, I don't have X, Y, and Z experience, but it's because I have this. And you cannot do that when you're sending in a blind application. So getting your name out there. And then you brought up the point of everything going on with COVID. And Leon, I'm sure as you know, banking and other types of jobs, they look very early, very early. So, I mean, I was shocked. I was going into my junior year and it's like, I don't know, October. And I'm looking, I'm ahead of the game, for next summer. I'm just going to start looking for internships. Like, yeah, sorry, we hired next summer's internships 3 months ago. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like a year and a half in advance. And this is ridiculous. So, and I know there's other industries that do the same thing. And during COVID, you just have to be like a little gnat, you have to be front of mind for these people because yeah, okay, we're not hiring, times are tough. Okay, but keep me in the front of your mind because the number one opportunities I had was when I was always in front of mind of people, just, kind of setting myself out there. The next time an opportunity comes on their desk, they go, who is the recent people I talked to? I'm going to shoot them this opportunity, not someone I talked to 6 months ago who was great. I'm going to talk to the person who emailed me last week looking for a job opportunity. So I just say, stay on the top of mind and stay on top of these dates because it screwed me once and it was not going to do it to me again because they interview early.
Very true, very true. Mirrors my experience as well. Like it's interesting. I'm not sure if I want to open this next topic, but I think it's very important. So interviewing and resume. I think we could fill a whole show about those two topics. But maybe real quick, if you have like one piece of advice that goes beyond conventional wisdom and the conventional knowledge that you learned in your experience, what's a super piece of advice for interviewing and resumes?
I'll just say one thing about resumes, because we could go on and on and on. But a resume tells your story when you don't know the other person. And so it needs to be authentic to you, but also speak to the job that you're hoping to get. And also being clear about what you've been doing. I see way too many resumes where being a student athlete is like one bullet point, but that's where you spend so much of your time that it deserves a lot more real estate and to explain who you are and your work ethic and all those types of things. And then it is a living document. So you don't create a resume and it's over. Like that is a document that changes based on what you're applying for and the things that you're doing while you're a student athlete and your community service and your experiences that you've had or any awards and recognition. So just know you always keep one version that's a living document and you adjust based on what you are applying to. And that's what I'll say, because I know there's a lot more everyone else wants to say.
Yeah, I'll echo what Alyssa said in terms of, don't downplay your student athlete experience, hype it up because that's what you've been working on. And I'll just give a brief story. There was a guy that I had been connected with when I first started at Pitt, and he had graduated. He was training for the NFL for a while and decided he was going to go after a job. And he only had one bullet point on his resume highlighting his sport. And we ended up writing probably 12 to 15 bullet points about things that he did in his sport. And he had a job, within 3 weeks of us updating his resume. So, don't downplay it. I'll say that. And then in terms of the interview process, the biggest thing that I always say is you need to be an expert on yourself and you need to be an expert on the company that you're going after. So to Alyssa's point earlier, that goes back to knowing your values, knowing the values of the company, knowing current trends that are going on within that industry, knowing what's going on in the news with them. And then, when they ask you a question about, tell us a time you had to overcome adversity, or tell us about a time you had a conflict with a teammate, you should be able to go like that. That shouldn't be a problem for you because you have plenty of examples throughout your sport and your academic career. So even if you don't have work experience, you can highlight those.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And to speak more on the interview side and to echo what Alyssa said, the whole thing is a story. I mean, you're a salesman. That's what an interview is. You're selling who you are, why you're going to be great for the company. So the whole thing is a story to me. I mean, your resume, like you said, is a story, but the way you tell it that's the bread and butter. It's, my whole life, I wanted to be a tennis player and I was dedicated. I wanted to be pro. that's, that decision switched to now what I want to do. And that's why I don't have X, Y, and Z experience, right? Like that is so crucial. This is why I put in 40 plus hours a week in my sport. So that's why I don't have this internship. But because of that, I have work ethic, time management, all of these things. So you have to be just an expert at telling your story. And then the other thing that I've noticed, and obviously, as you know, Leon, there's, a huge technical part with some types of interviews for jobs. And what they will do with student athletes, they know you're a good leader for the most part. They know that you like to work hard. They know a lot of the skills, but they question, does he have the technical experience? So there's your opportunity to check the box right there, because maybe you didn't have the best GPA because you were on the court all the time, or maybe you didn't have the internships, but here's a chance to study for something to show your technical prowess and what you're applying for. And then all their worries about you not being technically qualified kind of go away. And they're like, wow, this guy's not only a great leader, or guy or girl is not only a great leader, is competitive and all these great things that an athlete has, but they know their stuff. And you can really jump off the page without it having to really shine out on your resume, if you didn't get that experience. So that's my two takeaways, something you can control. So I would say control it.
Can I just add one other thing? I try to tell student athletes every day that the commitment that they all have to their sport, the amount of time that they train, they practice, they review film, they think about competition, they prepare, they eat right, all of those things. The same concepts need to be what you do to prepare for life after sports, or even back it up, internships and all of that. Like that you have to commit to that level of effort in order to achieve what it is you want to achieve personally. And we know that you all can do it because you do it already for your sport. So when we talk about interviews, I am telling people over and over again, we're going to do mock interviews again and again and again, because we have to practice, because it's a natural fear people have to speak with others they don't really know and to have to talk about ourselves. Oh my goodness. So we've got to practice it just like we would practice their sport. And the other part of an interview is, I think we all speak so generally, assuming people know what we're talking about. And an interview is the opportunity and the time where you have to give specific examples. So you have to know something about yourself that's not generic. You have to be able to give an example about overcoming a challenge, about how to communicate, about holding yourself and others accountable, about dealing with multiple priorities, and not just say, I can handle multiple priorities. Like, what is the actual example? Tell it to me so that I understand what your experiences and skills are. I think that's so critical in the interview process.
Sydney, if you don't mind me adding a bit, I know you talked about earlier how it's difficult to have, across different industries. Obviously, interviews are different, and the way you build your resume is different. I will say, at least for my resume, I would highlight in one bullet point, 20 hours a week, tournaments on the weekends, X amount of tournaments per year. Like, I would highlight the whole bullet point. It was my time commitment, very, very well put out, because not every industry actually gets it. You'd be surprised when I was interviewing for the Masters of Business Analytics, like a data analytics role, they're a lot more academic. And the head guy, he was like, oh, tennis team. So is that a club or something? No idea, like zero. And after seeing that, he's like, oh, so like, do you do something on the weekends, like an extracurricular? Like, just no idea. So even though we all assume in our heads, like, okay, everyone gets it, not everyone gets it. So I feel like it's good for a student athlete to lay out, like, this is my time commitment. So people are like, oh, wow, like this was a job for them. This wasn't just like a little fun hobby. Even though most people in America get it, not everyone does, especially in some of the academic fields. So that's my only other two piece with that.
That's awesome. I don't even know if I want to ask the next question, because I feel you guys all just touched on it so well. But I was going to ask about, what are the transferable skills that student athletes have? I don't even know if there are any left that you guys haven't touched on already. I guess the only other thing that I would mention is why are these skills that student athletes have, like you mentioned, the competitive, the drive, the time management, why are these skills so crucial when we enter into the workforce or when we're interviewing to go to grad school? How can we frame these skills that we have and really present them in a beautiful package when we're doing our interviews? And how can we highlight what we've done in the pool, on the field, on the court, and really use that to our advantage?
Oh, Sydney, that's so good. I think what student athletes bring to the table are the skills that employers won't have to teach. An employer will give you all the technical, training. They will make sure that you can do the job. Oftentimes, people are hiring for the right person, and an athlete brings everything you said, plus competing and performing under pressure and communicating on all different levels and having to work in an environment and achieve goals in an environment with people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, which is so important in your professional life. And those are things they're not going to have to teach. Those are intangibles. Those make you a much stronger candidate than someone else who hasn't had any of those experiences. And you take feedback every single day. You have to adapt to that feedback from your coaches, good and bad, things you like and don't like, but you still have to make those changes and move forward, because every day in your team environments, you all are working towards an ultimate goal, right? Which I believe all the team's ultimate goal is a national championship. So that's the highest prize. And an employer wants to hire somebody who wants to achieve the highest level accomplishment possible.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I feel like that was just a mic drop moment for Alyssa, but I guess I'll just add this, in terms of going back to the part where she talked about working for people with different backgrounds. I know diversity, equity, and inclusion is really crucial right now. And, I was just working with a friend of mine who played basketball professionally for 6 years overseas. And that was just, one bullet point on his resume, whereas he played in 5 different countries and, had to interact with people from all different cultural backgrounds on those teams. So I think really being able to highlight, your ability to work with people from those different backgrounds is crucial, because, no matter what sport you play, I'm sure you encountered that.
Yeah. Another thing I would add, I totally agree when you say working with teams. How many times a semester do students work in a group project, which, by the way, is nothing like working in a team? Probably like 3 times, right? And you message your group mates like once and then it's done. You are working and communicating every single day for 4 or 5 years, literally every single day. So you want, and I don't know if athletes typically maybe don't know this, but literally every job is working in a team. You do not work alone in any job. So you have an advantage because you are working in a team and communicating and solving those problems every single day, because there's disputes in your team. There's all this team culture you got to build up. There's a lot going on there. I would say the other aspect is, in a job, like you said, Alyssa, the goal is to compete, is to win. It is to win. It's to beat the competition, not just in business, any field. The goal is to be the best. And as an athlete, you are literally trained to be better than everyone else. Like that's the way your brain is wired. You want to get an edge somehow. And then the last thing I would say is, obviously time management is an advantage, but starting my job, I can highlight that, because there have been times where, I'll wake up at like 5 a.m. because I want to get something done before X time. And literally I'm having flashbacks to when I have to wake up at 4:45 for running or whatever it is. And I'm like, wow, like this is the exact same thing where I got to give myself a self pep talk when I'm like 3rd set cramping or whatever. I'm giving myself the exact same pep talk that I did then that I'm doing at 5 a.m. when I'm like, God, I really don't want to do this. Like, it's unbelievable. So I would say, like, there's a willpower, there's a time management there. You're working in teams. I don't think it's replaceable. And like you said, you learn all the skills on the job anyway. So.
Yeah, I think they were all excellent points. I'm inspired. I think it was an excellent conversation. And before I close us out, we touched on a number of different resources tonight. I want to give each of you another opportunity to maybe share one specific resource that we didn't mention yet, or the greatest resource you have in terms of professional development.
Real quick, I think because internships are so difficult right now with COVID, and our institution at one point in the spring pulled back and almost all internships had to be remote. So I want to just mention Parker Dewey. That is a site that all student athletes should go on and create an account, because there are basically what's called a micro internship. So they're project-based internships, and you create an account and you apply for those projects that are listed there. All the details are available, and there are lots of remote options. So if you are having trouble getting some practical experience, or you just want to try a project, that's something that I would think about. And then also a program called Winning Edge Academy. They are doing some gig internship projects as well, and some leadership development that I think really would help you in your professional development side of things.
Yeah, just to echo that, what Alyssa just said, I would say utilize the resources within your athletic department. You know, a lot of times departments can use the free help. So, you know, take advantage of those opportunities, whether it be an internship or a time to volunteer. If you can't commit yourself to a full internship, you know, try and find somewhere within your athletic department or on campus that you can volunteer with. And then I would also say clubs and organizations on campus are a good way to build your network. You know, they'll bring in guest speakers, like kind of similar to what Dane was talking about earlier. But also a good way for you to network with your peers, because once you graduate, you know, that's going to be your peers that you're entering the workforce with. So don't take those lightly. I would say utilize those.
Yeah, I don't have anything better to add to that, except for to me, the most important is that mentor. Find that person, like whoever that is, let them grab a hold of you and guide you through the process and stick with them consistently. I think that was the key for me. I had a guy literally like shake me my junior year. I had no LinkedIn, no resume, no whatever, like shake me, like, what are you doing? So set me straight. And I probably saw him like once every 2 weeks. Like I was very consistent with it. And I feel like I turned into someone who was knowledgeable about career development very quickly. I don't think it's you know, crazy science, but it's something that it has a lot, it's involved. So I think being consistent and having that person guide you through that process, find who that is and let them help you.
Excellent closing words. With that, yeah, Danny, Dane, Alyssa, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I think there were amazing insights. Sydney, thank you very much for hosting this with me. And my closing words, my closing remarks, I think our target audience are student athletes in the Atlantic Coast Conference. That alone tells me that you have excellence and greatness within you. And I will tell you that these things transfer into different areas. So be confident. I didn't plan that, but I just thought of a quote that I read earlier. People deserve to be the person they're meant to be. So don't settle for average. You have what it takes to become what you want. And I think we learned a lot of helpful tips to help you get there. With that being said, thank you very much. And everyone have a great night.